Put a sock in it. Uh-oh.
Serious Sam 3 BFE released in 2011, and many longtime fans of the series, including myself, did not like what they got. You see, at the time, Croteam were working on an unnamed military shooter, and they were discussing the possibility of working on Doom 4 with id Software. Since both projects did not work out, Croteam then decided to make a new Serious Sam game with some of the assets from both projects, which had a somewhat negative effect on Serious Sam 3's gameplay. The first 4 levels of the game look like generic 2010's military shooter levels, and there is the unwelcome addition of reloading to the series. There is also the sprint mechanic, but I don't think it's detrimental to the gameplay, so I don't really have a negative opinion of it. Those were just some of Serious Sam 3's problems, which made me abandon the whole series for nearly a decade. Thing is, there is now a mod which fixes the majority of Serious Sam 3's issues, and it makes it play like a really good Serious Sam game, and said mod is what I want to discuss in this video. So, without further ado, let's talk about Serious Sam 3 BFE Devolved. This mod completely overhauls the gameplay of Serious Sam 3, making it play like an actual Serious Sam game. The first major change one would notice when launching this mod is that you no longer have to reload any weapon that's not the infinite ammo pistol or the double barrel coach gun, and the iron sights have been completely removed from the game. Some weapon models like the assault rifle and pump action shotgun are replaced with new ones, and the Devastator is replaced by the classic grenade launcher. On the topic of weapons, the sniper rifle has been reworked, and you now actually have ammo for it. The laser gun also has more ammo and now appears as a normal weapon in the campaign. It's no longer restricted to being a secret-only weapon. These changes allow the modder to completely rework the combat encounters in this game. Kamikaze spam and clear stampedes, with which players of the classic games are familiar, are back in full force, and rooms that have 10 to 20 enemies in them in the vanilla game now have over 100 packed into them. You also have a lot more ammo scattered around the levels compared to the vanilla game, which had a problem of extreme ammo scarcity. This mod basically gives you more enemies to fight and more ammo to do so, which makes the gameplay more like classic Serious Sam. Don't get me wrong, there isn't an overabundance of ammo. You do have to think about which ammo type you are using, when, and against which enemies, but you won't be running around with ammo for only 2 weapons at a time. The modder also made the Dark Tomb sections actually not horrible. Not good, but not horrible. In the vanilla game, you had these super dark tombs with some annoying monkey enemies jumping around, but in this mod they aren't as dark, and the annoying jumping enemies are replaced by spider enemy encounters. In my opinion, this is a massive improvement over the vanilla game. Another good example of a reworked encounter is the end of The Last Man on Earth. Instead of collecting 8 gas cans with small enemy encounters in between, you collect 1 gas can and then you have to fight an absolutely massive horde of enemies. So massive in fact that it tanked my frame rate, as you can see in the corner of the screen. Of course, on Linux I can enable game mode and gain between 30 and 40 FPS in this particular fight, and I am recording on the CPU with a high bitrate, so that also tanks my performance in the CPU limited scenario. This mod, while a significant improvement over the vanilla game, is not perfect. An issue I found is that the absence of the Devastator can make major biomechanoid encounters somewhat frustrating, since their AI in Sam 3 is a bit different than that in classic games. The rocket launcher is no longer the best weapon to take him out, since they sidestep some of your rockets, so the classic strategy of shooting 5 rockets at them and moving on doesn't work here. The rocket speed is simply too low to be reliably used against these enemies at a safe distance. This is not a problem in vanilla, since you have the Devastator, which has a much higher projectile velocity. Anyway, the way I got around this issue is to just use the minigun or laser gun against these enemies. The first 4 levels of the game are also still the same old boring city environments. New enemy placements and tweaks made to the weapons make them more fun to play, yes, but these levels were made with assets intended for a generic early 2010s military shooter, so it makes sense that they are not good Serious Sam levels. I don't think the modder can do anything about these levels being kind of eh. Anyway, they're pretty short and you can get to the real game real quick, so it's not that big of a deal. This is a good good time to talk about things which are in vanilla Serious Sam 3, but I did not appreciate before, since I just hated the gameplay so much. The Fusion version of Serious Sam 3 is absolutely beautiful to look at, especially when you select the Vivid Color preset. It also runs really well, even more so if you run the game using game mode on Linux. On the topic of Linux, the Fusion 2017 hub has a native Linux version, which is actually really good and makes me happy, since Linux versions of games are rare. And good ones even more so. Serious Sam 3 is such a good looking game that I find it hard to believe that it runs on the same engine as 4. Serious Sam 4 somehow manages to look worse than 3 while running like absolute garbage on my pretty decent modern machine. This reminds me that I need to make a video about Serious Sam 4's issues, since my old review was a little too positive and I did not notice some of the major issues of the game at the time. Well, this is Serious Sam 3 BFE Devolved. I'm amazed how this mod managed to turn one of my least favorite games into one of my favorite games. If you own Serious Sam 3 on Steam, I highly recommend you try this mod. It's available in the Fusion 2017 Steam Workshop page. If you like this video, then leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget to enable all notifications so that you don't miss any future content like this. See you in the next one.